It's Diosis, baby.
Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. But before we get started, I want to say I'm extremely happy and thankful for my new 100,000 new friends. In just under 2 weeks, the response to this show has been nothing short of a miracle. The comments are full of positive energy that inspires my team and I to continue to bring truthfulness so that you can make sense of the world around you and exercise your God-given right to be free. Now let's get into the show. This year's election fraud has turned America upside down. Now, more than 3 weeks has passed since the election day. Many analysts, both inside and outside of the U.S., have concluded that if the left-wing forces did not commit fraud, President Trump would have without doubt won the elections. At this point, America's leftist polls and media predictions are once again grossly inaccurate, just as they were in 2016. However, the legal battle is not over, and the election results are not yet to be settled. But some of you may argue that these are just baseless statements. Well then, let's back this up with a well-founded example. Burgess Owens, the former NFL star who represented the Republican Party in Utah's 4th Congressional District, was declared the winner of the race on Monday, November 23rd. But his pre-election polling average was 11 points behind his Democratic opponent. But the final results reversed those polls. This is not the only case. Now, let's take a look at President Trump's campaign rally speech in Middletown, Pennsylvania, on September 26th of this year. It was a Saturday night, and in front of a large crowd of supporters, President Trump once again questioned the integrity of the upcoming presidential election. The New York Times, which also reported on the rally, quoted President Trump as saying that the only way for the Democrats to win in Pennsylvania was to cheat. He also mentioned that the upcoming election would be controversial and raised the prospect that the final outcome of the election might be decided by the U.S. Congress. He even predicted the final congressional vote. At that rally, President Trump said the election this November would be a disaster, but he believed he would have an advantage if the outcome of the election were decided by the Congress. After citing some of the Democrats' party's exaggerated vote rigging in previous elections, he brought up the current election. We'll look at only a portion of his full remarks.
These people are crazy. This is going to be a disaster. And all I'm asking is people go out to vote, and stop with this nonsense, because we're going to be counting ballots for the next 2 years. And I don't want to end up in the Supreme Court, and I don't want to go back to Congress either. Even though we have an advantage if we go back to Congress. Does everyone understand that? I think it's 26 to 22 or something, because it's counted 1 vote per state. So we actually have an advantage. Oh, they're going to be thrilled to hear that.
Based on President Trump's speech, he was urging the voters to get out and vote to try to combat the impact of election fraud, but it really happened. What President Trump meant was that Congress may play the role of the ultimate arbiter and be the one to declare a winner. For example, right now, if the U.S. courts were to reject the results of several key states because of fraud, and if neither Biden nor President Trump passed the 270 electoral votes threshold, then Congress would hold a runoff election. The House of Representatives votes for president, and the members of the House are sorted by state, with each state going to whichever party that dominates. There's only 1 vote per state, and there are 50 states in the United States. So the person who wins 26 votes is the winner and becomes the president. President Trump says he has an advantage in this kind of election. This is true given the current Republican situation in the House of Representatives. He said this a month or so before the election, so he clearly has a grasp of how the situation might develop. It's not what he wanted, but it's much more reliable than the polls. At the moment, 6 key states in which President Trump is waging a legal battle are making progress, and the total number of electoral votes in these states is 79, which is enough to potentially change the outcome of the election. In Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court, Judge Patricia McCullough, on the afternoon of November 25th, ordered Pennsylvania state officials to not certify the results of the presidential election or any other election race until Friday, November the 27th, when a local Pennsylvania court will hold a hearing. That's because on November 21st, Pennsylvania Representative Mike Kelly and 3 other Republicans filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania's Governor Tom Wolf, Secretary of State Kathy Buckbar, and others, alleging that they arbitrarily amended the law to expand the mail-in ballot. Another significant event occurred on the same day. In the afternoon of Wednesday, November 25th, Rudy Giuliani, the head of President Trump's legal team, attended a public hearing held by the Pennsylvania State Majority Policy Committee in Gettysburg at the Wyndham Gettysburg Hotel, led by Pennsylvania Republican Senator Doug Mastriano, to expose the problem of election fraud in Pennsylvania. According to the U.S. conservative media, election night, President Trump had a 700,000 vote lead over Biden. But at midnight, Pennsylvania suddenly stopped counting votes, and all of a sudden, a large number of Biden votes were poured into the system. And Biden's vote curve, instead of a normal arc, jumped almost straight up. And at the Pennsylvania public hearing on November 25th, an eyewitness pointed out that the big spike in the polls that night was a sign of election fraud. Giuliani asked the witness if 604,000 votes came in all at once in 90 minutes that night. The witness said correct. Giuliani then asked, based on these three vertical jump charts, did you calculate how many votes went to Biden and how many went to President Trump? The witness said that during that period, Biden received more than 570,000 votes.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
The crowd erupted in laughter and gasped at the statement. On the day of the public hearing, a mysterious witness telephoned in out of the blue, causing a chorus of cheers and applause.
We have one additional witness.
Commentator.
Please.
All right. I will introduce to you now, Mr. President, you are connected.
Networks, but I really appreciate being asked to speak, and I'm in the Oval Office right now, and it's very interesting to see what's going on, and this was an election that we won easily. We won it by a lot. This is going to be your crowning achievement because you're saving our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
As we have just seen, President Trump also called in during the public hearing, and he pointed out that many examples of election fraud in Pennsylvania. This included banning Republican poll watchers from the counting stations, and in some cases, they were aggressive about it. According to the news, President Trump was supposed to show up in person with Giuliani, but in the end, it didn't happen. And on November 25th, President Trump was not scheduled to appear in public. And while President Trump didn't go to the hearing in person, one source says it's because Giuliani's son and special assistant to the president had just tested positive for COVID-19. Health and safety considerations may have been in play. But there's another possibility, which is the factor of personal safety. There is a rumor going around from American netizens that has not been extensively proven. However, we can take it as something to consider. Simply put, the rumor is that President Trump activated Executive Order 57, which was signed by former President Kennedy in 1961 to take back the authority of the Central Intelligence Agency, to deploy special forces and to reduce the authority of this huge, secretive, powerful intelligence agency. However, Kennedy was soon assassinated and the case remains unsolved to this day. But there is a saying among American folklore that Kennedy may have been assassinated because he wanted to affect the CIA and other deep-pocketed forces. Thus, if it is true that President Trump activated Executive Order 57, it is also likely that he has security concerns. And his newly appointed Secretary of Defense, Christopher C. Miller, has asked the special forces in the U.S. military to report directly to him. I wonder if that has anything to do with more action that's to come. Although President Trump did not attend the Pennsylvania public hearing, he is reported to be considering attending another public hearing this upcoming Tuesday, December 1st in Michigan, which is similar to November 25th Pennsylvania public hearing, where much of the evidence on election fraud in the state will be presented. The hearing will be hosted by the Michigan State Senate, where the Republican Party is currently the majority party. Later in the day on December 1st, the state Senate's Oversight Committee will hold a hearing and discussion on Detroit's voting counting system. Meanwhile, Republican members of the Michigan House of Representatives also are taking action. 3 Republican House members, Bo LaFave, Matt Maddock, and Darrell Randin, urgently introduced an impeachment resolution accusing Michigan Governor Whitmer of disregarding the people's livelihoods by enacting a series of extraordinary strict social restraint orders. even interfering with people inside their homes. Despite such bans, Michigan protesters did not back down from their repeated demonstrations, and now they have filed for impeachment. Currently, the impeachment resolution has support from the Kalkaska County Commissioners in northern Michigan, but there is resistance in the state legislature. As we mentioned, the Pennsylvania and Michigan legislature has held or will hold public hearings on election fraud, which is good news for President Trump's legal battle. The hearing in Arizona is scheduled for next Monday, November 30th. This past weekend, attorney Sidney Powell charged that in one state, due to a fraudulent system, every Democratic candidate, including Biden, had a fraudulent system that was automatically set up to count from 35,000 votes, which means while all the other candidates started counting from zero, they had at least a 35,000 vote head start. During a phone interview on Tuesday with Fox News, Powell said that she had found a witness to this incident. And if upon investigation this is confirmed, not only could President Trump flip the election in Arizona, but it could also benefit other Republican runnings for Congress in the same state. There's another key state, Georgia, where according to Sidney Powell and Lin Wood, there are serious allegations of fraud and even corruption among officials. On November 24th, Lin Wood said he had been working with Powell and she was to file a lawsuit in Georgia. Powell has actually filed this lawsuit alleging widespread voting machine fraud in Georgia, as well as interference by foreign forces infiltrating the U.S. election. She wants to move quickly because this is important to all of the United States. At 2:17 p.m. on November 25th, Lin Wood tweeted an emergency motion against the state of Georgia, asking the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, which is responsible for Georgia, to expedite review of his opening statement. Currently, the conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is assigned to the 11th Circuit emergency cases. Biden had blocked Thomas's nomination to the court. Of course, Thomas will hear the case fairly, but even so, the situation is still in President Trump's favor. Things indeed are going in the right direction. According to the latest news, Lin Wood's application for an expedited review has been granted, which is another piece of good news for the President Trump's legal battle. Also, on the afternoon of the 24th, Lin Wood tweeted a series of videos showing a large truck, actually a shredding truck, that appeared in front of a vote counting center in Cobb County, Georgia on November 20th. He questioned the appearance of the shredding truck as an attempt to destroy evidence related to ballot fraud. The shredding vehicle at the scene belongs to the state's A1 Shredding, a recycling company. Because these videos were exposed, this company is also being considered as a suspect of fraud. This is no small matter. On November 21st, the company issued an emergency statement clarifying that they are a family business, that the shredding they did in front of the Jim Miller Park Event Center, used as the election office where ballots were stored, on the morning of November 20th was done at the request of a customer, and that the documents were shredded were not known to them. Because of their confidential nature, to prove their innocence, the company said it has contacted the Election Division of Georgia Secretary of State and filed a report with the FBI to investigate the incident. Besides the 4 key states we just mentioned, there's also progress in Wisconsin and Nevada. In Wisconsin, votes are being counted in 2 large counties, and in Nevada, according to President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, local Republicans will present extensive evidence of their voter fraud investigation at a court hearing on December 3rd and encourage people to pay attention to the presentation. So folks, mark your calendars and make sure you tune in on that day. As a matter of fact, the legal battle is now extending overseas, broadly speaking. The foreign adversaries hiding behind election fraud are also gradually being uncovered. On November 25th, Attorney Lin Wood also sent out a tweet drawing attention to the investigation of the governor of Georgia and the Secretary of State for information on the flow of money from the Chinese Communist Party and Dominion. Follow the money is a tried and true tip for investigating cases. President Trump's lawyer, Giuliani, also tweeted on the same day that Biden opposes the American First policy. So who would he put first? Obviously, the Communist China. The Chinese Communist Party paid millions of dollars to the Biden family. Also, on November 25th, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping publicly and officially congratulated Biden for the first time. I'm sure the top officials of the CCP have a pretty good idea of what's going on behind the scenes in this fraudulent election. The Biden camp may also feel guilty as President Trump's legal battle intensifies. At this point, Xi Jinping is publicly cheering them on so they can continue to revel in their false victory. The CCP has no choice because President Trump's administration is tightening their noose on the regime, and plans to increase sanctions against 89 Chinese enterprises with ties to the CCP military. Obviously, the successful re-election of President Trump is something the Chinese authorities do not want. The re-election of Biden would fulfill the wish of Xi Jinping's no confrontation, no opposition, and mutual respect. Biden has also stated that he does not intend to impose additional sanctions on the CCP, and that existing disputes will be resolved through multilateral negotiations that have proven ineffective. This kind of congratulation is in fact a manifestation of evil forces in the US and China getting closer together to support each other. You know, President Trump will definitely not let the CCP go after he is reelected. Not to mention, just look at the CCP's handling of the pandemic and Hong Kong. The CCP is simply not accountable to the international community. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Make sure to like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. On November 27th, President Trump tweeted that Biden can only enter the White House as a president if he can prove that his ridiculous 80 million votes were not fraudulently or illegally obtained. This is a very critical statement. It means that President Trump would confront these malicious forces in election fraud, fight to the end, and never concede. And with the same conviction as President Trump, I will ask all of you to help us here at the Eye Opener confront malicious forces by liking and sharing this video so that we can force the algorithm to spread the truth to more people. Also, double check to make sure that you are still subscribed. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do and ring the notification bell. Together, we can get the truth out. As we previously reported, on November 10th, the White House Budget Office directed federal departments to prepare budgets for President Trump's second term. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also stated publicly in front of the global media that there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Despite this, the leftist media has not stopped spreading fake news about President Trump. Independent investigation journalist James O'Keefe obtained an exclusive recording from a CNN internal meeting. He released a clip of the recording in the evening of December 1st. Someone in the recording mentioned that the news organization has to be very careful and very responsible about not giving President Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding. On December 1st, on behalf of the U.S. Department of Justice, Attorney General William Barr, who was nominated by President Trump, told the Associated Press that so far, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. We can imagine how many American voters would be very disappointed by Barr after reading this. Rudy Giuliani, the head of President Trump's legal team, quickly issued an announcement refuting Barr's statement. First, he stated that the DOJ did not even have a decent investigation into election fraud. Second, President Trump's team had collected evidence of election fraud in at least 6 critical states, but the DOJ had not seen it. Third, President Trump's team had also collected testimony from many witnesses, but the DOJ also did not look into it. Fourth, the DOJ had not audited any of the voting machines or called any witnesses to uncover the truth. Finally, Giuliani stated that they will continue to seek justice through the judicial system and state legislators and eventually all the way to the Supreme Court. The Attorney General's view indicated that he had no investigation and no knowledge of this massive election fraud. As we reported yesterday, a poll watcher in Pennsylvania revealed that after attending a public hearing in Pennsylvania last week, an agent from the DOJ office of the Inspector General paid a surprise visit to her home to collect evidence of election fraud. But the background of the investigation and the agent's motives are unclear. Most importantly, there have been no significant action by the DOJ to investigate election fraud. Thus, Giuliani's statement is a true reflection of the current situation of the DOJ. No wonder Attorney Powell mentioned in her November 30th interview that the FBI and the entire DOJ needed to be sanitized. In the Pennsylvania legislature, 26 Pennsylvania Republican representatives and 8 Pennsylvania state senators had introduced a resolution after last week's Pennsylvania public hearing, calling for Pennsylvania to decertify the results of the election and for the Pennsylvania General Assembly to select the electors instead. But according to the latest news, the Pennsylvania General Assembly was scheduled to adjourn on December 1st and will not likely reconvene until January of next year. If all goes according to plan, the Electoral College vote will be completed by then. But Republican leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives refused to extend the session and insisted on adjourning on December 1st. While a resolution usually requires 3 days of discussion before it can be voted on, the resolution mentioned above would not move forward in the Pennsylvania House for the time being. In fact, the leaders of Pennsylvania House and Senate are all Republicans. They published an article back in October saying that the State General Assembly would not intervene in the selection of presidential electors or determine the outcome of the presidential election. At that time, the election had not yet taken place. From this, we can see what kind of swamp President Trump is facing now. In addition to the Democrats, there are foreign influences. Even Attorney General Barr and the Republican leaders of the Pennsylvania legislature are all on the side of the swamp and not on the side of justice. So if the American judicial system and state legislators are so corrupted and they cannot even uphold justice, does President Trump have any other ways? The answer is yes. As we have mentioned in the previous programs, the United States has a Sedition Act, and there have been many times in the U.S. history when martial law has been used in extraordinary circumstances to restore social order. According to the Brennan Center's statistics in August of this year, there has been at least 68 times in U.S. history when martial law was imposed for a variety of reasons, including foreign war, civil war, rebellion, riots, and natural disasters. The 16th President, Abraham Lincoln, beloved by Americans, initiated martial law in 1863 in accordance with Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution, which states that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. In Maryland, Lincoln arrested thousands of people suspected of Southern sympathies and imprisoned them without trial in military prisons, some sentences for years. He even ordered the arrest of a member of the Ohio House of Representatives for alleged sabotage. At that time, the Chief Justice of the United States intervened and obstructed Lincoln, saying that Lincoln had violated habeas corpus, and Lincoln issued an arrest warrant for the Chief Justice. In a series of events, Lincoln's unconventional use of martial law brought the United States out of dangerous situations of imminent disintegration and maintained the stability and security of the United States. We the People's Convention, a right-wing organization in Ohio, issued a statement on December 1st and published a full-page ad in the Washington Times to appeal to President Trump, saying that if the U.S. legislature, courts, and even Congress do not follow the Constitution, then President Trump should issue a limited martial law and hold a new election to uphold election fairness. In the statement issued, the head of We the People said that the socialist left, which wanted to destroy the United States from 2008 to 2016, when former President Barack Obama was in power, is now openly engaged in a 4-year planned coup d'etat in an attempt to remove the illegally elected president of the United States. The statement also mentions that if elections are not guaranteed to be fair, the United States will cease to exist and the martial law is better than civil war. Attorney Lin Wood also tweeted a statement from We the People's Convention with the comment that the United States is headed for civil war, that this is a situation created by the third-party bad actors that want to take away the freedom of Americans, that the CCP is the main instigator behind this, and that the real enemy of the United States is the CCP, which has been infiltrating America for the last 20 years, from the local level to state and federal level. To top it all off, the CCP is now using the Dominion voting system to manipulate U.S. elections. Lin Wood said that he agrees with this statement, calls for the president to impose martial law and hold a new election. After Lincoln initiated martial law, he arrested many people in order to protect national security, and even put them in military prisons without a trial. If Trump does initiate martial law and conducts a new election, it is possible that he will follow Lincoln's example and clean up the swamp formed by the leftist forces in the U.S., including former and current government officials, leftist media executives who spread fake news, and tycoons and corporate leaders and CEOs of tech giants who participated in election fraud and attempted to subvert the legitimate election of the president, as well as the far-left organizations such as Antifa and BLM that disrupt the American society. Section 2384 of Title 18, Chapter 115 of the U.S. Code provides the penalty for seditious conspiracy. If two or more persons conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, they will each be fined under or imprisoned for no more than 20 years or both. Section 2385 also states that a fine of imprisonment for not more than 20 years or both for any person suspected of willfully and intentionally encouraging abetting, or advising the overthrow or destruction of the government and subordinate authorities of the United States or any related territory. A Twitter user listed in 2019 the people she thought were involved in the above crimes, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former President Barack Obama, the Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, billionaire George Soros, Facebook CEO, and dozens of others. But in fact, there may be much more than that. So, will Trump impose martial law? In a recent tweet, Trump suggested that the governor of Georgia should initiate a state of emergency to combat election fraud. Also, Trump's newly appointed Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, is reportedly very supportive of Trump, and upon taking office, requested that the U.S. Special Forces, which have authority to operate within the United States, report directly to him. We also began our program today with a tweet from Trump in which he said that the only way Biden could get into the White House was to prove that the votes were legitimate. Now that's a very strong statement. These are all signs that martial law will indeed be an option for President Trump to consider. And now more people, even some Republicans, have become suspicious in the widespread election fraud. For example, the Republican leader of Pennsylvania legislature, the Republican governor of Georgia, and the Secretary of State, and many others. In addition, as Attorney Lin Wood said, there was foreign involvement in the election, and the Chinese Communist Party was repeatedly mentioned as the most important foreign player in the fraud. Recently, a live recording of a conversation between two men from a factory in Guangdong, China that prints counterfeit U.S. ballots has been circulating on the internet. One of the men and a factory owner with a Cantonese accent talked in Mandarin about how to forge an American ballot. The quantity is not an issue. As long as you have the money, the quantity is not a problem. The ink and printing is different than normal. The printing isn't the same, is it? Yeah, if you look closely, the printing of the ballot is different. That doesn't matter. I will do it by looking at the pictures. What about the logistics? Because we are going to order in bulk. Large amount, logistics. Normally it would take days. Can you arrange an international courier service? Let me see. It seems that international shipping is also through logistics. How much do you charge for each ballot? I will ask someone to transfer the money to you. It's the same as last time. Okay. Fine. Please send me the QR code again. Oh, I still owe you a little. Okay, no worries. During the conversation, the client asked the Guangdong boss to send the printed counterfeit ballots to Zhuhai City and then send them in batches to Canada and Mexico in the name of medical supplies, personal mail, etc., rather than directly to the United States. There is one more piece of news that everyone should know. On December 1st, another piece of news broke out that Austin Security and Investigation Solutions found in the U.S. Stock Exchange filings that on October 8th of this year, just under a month before the election, UBS Securities, a Swiss investment bank, injected $400 million into Staple Street Capital, which acquired Dominion in 2018. The problem is that UBS, which is up to 75% owned by 5 Chinese companies, is considered a middleman for the Chinese government. In other words, UBS Securities, which injected $400 million into Dominion's parent company a month before the election, is practically owned by the Chinese government. This was also retweeted by Attorney Lin Wood on December 1st. This is yet another explosive example of the Chinese Communist Party's involvement in the U.S. election. We have already covered Dominion extensively in our previous videos, and we all know the disgraceful role it plays in the election. Dr. Navid Kashavaraniyya, a cybersecurity expert who has served the Department of Defense, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the CIA, was one of the witnesses in Attorney Powell's complaint, and he testified with 35 years of professional experience that Dominion had backdoors to tamper with ballots in real time. He also mentioned that its systems were vulnerable and that the system had ties to both Venezuela and the CCP. Dr. Kashavaraniyya stated that the Hammer is a supercomputer and Scorecard is a software that was indeed used by Dominion's system to engage in election fraud, as testified previously by the retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney and others. Lieutenant General McInerney had also previously accused the CIA of using the system against Americans. Dr. Kashavaraniyya said that using the system would also make it possible to modify voting results in real time without leaving electronic fingerprints. On December 1st, the state of Michigan held a public hearing to testify against the fraudulent activities of the TCF Center in Detroit. At the hearing, a Dominion-trained contractor bravely came forward to expose the fraud and said she witnessed some ballots being double-counted 8 to 10 times. When it comes to these public hearings, they are very important and of a great concern to the American people. However, the leftist media did not cover these hearings, and instead, the NTD News and a handful of other conservative medias in the United States live broadcasted the entire hearing. On November 30th in Arizona, the live broadcast of NTD TV in both Chinese and English has attracted more than 2 million viewers, and many people in Arizona were watching the live broadcast outside the public hearing venue. At the end of the live broadcast, they shouted NTD as a token of appreciation. On December 1st, President Trump's legal team filed a lawsuit in Wisconsin Supreme Court alleging that a large number of absentee ballots totaling around 220,000 were illegally counted in the state. Also, in Nevada, the Trump team won an order of investigation and a judge ordered an inspection of the voting equipment in Clark County, Nevada. Attorney Powell also tweeted the other day announcing that she is preparing to file a lawsuit in Virginia. While it's not one of the key swing states, not only President Trump, but also multiple Republican candidates are victims of election fraud. We will continue to follow the progress of the legal battles in our upcoming videos. In the final part of today's program, I'd like to discuss leaked confidential reports revealing the gross mishandling of China's CCP virus. On December 1st, CNN published a leaked report that, according to a 170-page official internal CCP document, the official public number of cases of the CCP virus in Hubei province on February 10th of this year was significantly lower than officially reported. The internal information states the official number of cases publicly stated at the time was 3,911, but the total number of cases in Hubei province was actually 5,918. Although CNN is finally questioning the reliability of CCP reports and exposed higher numbers, I personally think that the number may have been much higher than 5,918. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Make sure to like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I will see you next time.